Hello and welcome to part 2 of this series about wires, hoses and ropes and so on. In this video I'll show you how to make a messy coil of wire or rope like this one. I've reused this asset a few times in this scene. Here it is again, and also just under here. It's very easy to make, so let's take a look. I'll just jump outside the scene, and the first thing to do is make a circle, and I'll move it up in space and isolate it. I'll convert it to an editable spline object, and I'll select this vertex and break it in two. I'll make sure segment end is checked, and I'll select one of the broken vertices and move it up in Z by 4 centimeters. Then the rest of them I'll move up 3, 2 and 1 centimeters. Then I'll just rotate the tangent handles a bit. So in effect we've made one revolution of a helix. Now you might wonder why I didn't just use the helix object, and I'll show you why. If I make a helix object that mimics the one we just made and convert it to an editable spline, we can see that it's composed of 41 vertices compared to the one that I made over here, which is composed of just 4 vertices. You can by all means use the helix object for this technique if you want to, and this will give you more options for high frequency deformations. But I'm going to use low frequency deformations, and I find it easier to handle just 4 vertices. With snaps and axis constraints active, I'll shift drag this one up and make 4 references, and then I'll move the master off to the side. In the first reference I'll select the 3 intact vertices, and then I'll put a noise modifier on after the modifier stacks diverge. I'm going to set the scale to 40, X 35, Y 35, Z 20, and then I'll copy it and paste it into each of the references and give these a unique seed so they're all different. Now I'll select the first one and convert it to an editable spline, which makes it unique, and that will allow me to attach the other ones, which gives me a single spline object. I'll weld the broken vertices together. In my scene the coil is hanging off a hook, so I want to make the coil more compact on one side. So with those vertices still selected, I'll put on a bend modifier and I'll adjust it just like this. Let's just move the master out of the way. You can put on other deformations if you want. I'll collapse this and clear the sub-object selection, and then let's put an FFD on the entire object. At this point all you have to do is put in your in and out splines. I'll collapse the coil once again, and then I'll attach these splines and I'll move them into position and weld the vertices. You can put a sweep modifier on this, or if you watched part 1 of this series you might remember we made a bunch of twisted wires that followed a path. So you can use this coil as a path. This is what we made at the end of the last video. Let's just move it to our new path. So we'll have to make it a bit longer. I'm going to speed this part up because I go over this setup for the twisted wire in part 1 of this series, so make sure you check that video out. I'll put a link in the description below. I'll hide the path and make all of these grey. Because the deformation is pretty intense, it looks like we need to adjust the cable tie. I'll find the master and move it close to one of the references, and then adjust the FFD until it looks good. Again, you can just refer to part 1 of this series for more details about this. And that's it for this technique.